Continuing protests in the Egyptian capital. This is Al Jazeera. These are the stories making headlines here. Protesters in Egypt have called for another mass demonstration on Tuesday. The new rallying cry comes as the leading activist was released from custody, while Ghonim was behind the Facebook page created with setting off the uprising.
First of all, I send my condolences to all the people who were killed. It was a peaceful revolution. We didn't want to do any damage. Don't focus your cameras on me. I'm not a hero. The real heroes are the youth who are behind this revolution. By God's will, we're going to clean this country of this rubbish.
Meanwhile, President Hosni Mubarak has held his first meeting with his new cabinet. The embattled regime offered further concessions as it tried to diffuse popular anger. They included a 15% pay rise for public sector workers and pensioners. A Chechen separatist leader says he ordered the suicide bombing that killed 36 people at Moscow's main airport last month. In a video posted on an Islamist website, Doku Umarov described the attack as a special operation directed against Russians and their Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. He warned there'd be more attacks in pursuit of an independent Muslim state. Southern Sudan has voted overwhelmingly to break away from the north. Election officials have confirmed 99% of voters backed secession. Africa's newest nation will be officially confirmed in July. Officials from North and South Korea have come together for the first dialogue between the two countries since September. The meeting will lay the groundwork for high-level talks, possibly between ministers. The party of Myanmar pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi is calling for talks with Western governments to discuss sanctions on the country. The NLD wants existing restrictions to remain in place, but some experts say this could further divide the opposition movement and harm foreign investments. The Cambodian government says heavy shelling by the Thai army has caused part of an 11th century temple to collapse. Fighting over the past 4 days has forced thousands of Thai villagers to flee the disputed border region. Hundreds of Cambodians have also been evacuated. Both countries lay claim to the area. Well, those are the main headlines here. The news continues on Al Jazeera after Frost Over the World. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
Welcome to a very special edition of Frost Over the World from Australia, in fact from Canberra, where we're going to be meeting Australia's first woman Prime Minister in all of its history. And she's going to be giving us her first full-length international interview yet. Since controversially coming to power last June, when she ousted her colleague and then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, Ms Gillard has had a tumultuous few months. She held an election in August and ended up with a minority government supported by 3 independent MPs and 1 Green. And since the start of the year, she's been trying to help those communities in Queensland who have been so badly affected by Australia's worst floods in living memory. So with that background, let's meet the Prime Minister in her office right now. Prime Minister, I've often said to people who've recently attained power and so on, whether attaining power whether it was different to what they'd expected, because, and in your case you've been Deputy Prime Minister and so on, but in fact it's different in your case because you've been confronted with such a major situation, first of all with Queensland. I mean, how soon did you realise how serious that was?
The realisation, unfortunately, came quite quickly.
Yeah, of course.
We've had just a dreadful series of weeks with the dimensions of the flooding crisis in Queensland, and now, of course, with a cyclone also causing damage in Queensland and more water pouring from the sky. So as we moved through the December period into the period just after Christmas, it became clearer and clearer that this was going to be a big crisis, and it is the most costly natural disaster we've ever faced as a nation. We have seen some loss of Australian lives. We've seen more Australian lives lost in other tragedies, for example, the Victorian bushfires. But just in terms of the sheer scale of it, the amount of the country that has had to battle floodwaters, it's been some very testing days, and they continue.
How long will it take for things to be back to normal? I mean, it's a long process, presumably, an expensive process and a long one.
It's going to be both long and expensive. Communities have really pulled together to get things back to a semblance of normal pretty quickly. We've literally had armies of volunteers turn out to, clear filth out of people's homes that the floodwaters have left behind, and to clear off the streets all of the garbage and, broken trees and all the rest of it that was there. But we need to rebuild a lot of infrastructure, a lot of roads, rail, ports, and that is going to take some time. We can't do everything at once, so we're going to sequence the most urgent priorities to make sure communities can get back to normal, in the sense of farmers getting their product to market and our great mining businesses getting their coal and other mineral exports out to our ports.
And the ANZ Bank said some of the damage cost 20 billion, I think they said, and so on. I mean, how much will it have cost by the end of the procedure, do you think? I mean, more than that or less?
Well, there are a lot of estimates around about the total scale of the damage. From the federal government's point of view, our first estimate is $5.6 billion, and of course we're talking about the major infrastructure. All of the damage to people's homes and businesses is on top of that. So this is a huge natural disaster for our country. But we will get through it, we will work our way through it. People have really pulled together, and we are in a fortunate circumstance where our economy is very strong, and so we will be able to absorb this disruption to our economy and very quickly get back to strong economic conditions. We continue to have low unemployment, strong wages growth, inflation where we want it, so the strength of the economy is going to assist us through.
The tax to bring money in has caused controversy, of course. I mean, people care about it, but maybe they've already given money before they heard about this tax and so on. In retrospect, are you glad you did the tax, or do you think it would have been better not to have done it that way?
The flood levy is an important part of financing this rebuilding. Australians have been very generous and donated money to the Premier's Relief Fund and various other relief appeals that have been hosted. That money's going to go to help families directly, to make a difference in someone's life. This is billions of dollars to make a difference for the hard infrastructure the nation needs, communities need, and the economy needs. So it's two different purposes, and we do need to finance it. We also need to finance it whilst we're getting on with our other reform priorities as a government. So the best way of doing it was to ask the people of Australia for a contribution, but we've also substantially cut back in other areas of government spending. So for every dollar we're asking Australians to put in through a levy, we've cut back $2 in other areas of the federal budget to make room for the flood rebuilding.
You, since you became Prime Minister, of course, you had that election that was very close and had a happy outcome for you, just at the end and so on. Do you think you could have survived as leader of the party if you hadn't won that election?
I really haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what the alternative would have been. Certainly I would have offered myself to be Leader of the Opposition if we hadn't formed a government, and believe I would have served as Leader of the Opposition. But the essence of being in government and managing both the day-to-day pressures and the long-term reform agendas is you don't spend too much time on the what-if questions.
No.
Rather, you spend your time on what can I build today that's going to matter for tomorrow.
Yeah, not the what if. Someone said, I read somewhere, someone said was doing an examination, a profile of you, that in fact, in a way, the fact that you've never married was almost a deliberate sacrifice that you made, choosing public life rather than marriage. Was it a deliberate sacrifice, or did it just happen?
I wouldn't use those words myself. I've always been someone who's worked hard, who's believed in making a contribution. I believe work has defined my life, and